Good morning and welcome to all of you joining us virtually for today's Bravo Dialogue. What does the G20 Sustainability Agenda mean for businesses in the Americas? I'm Maria Lourdes Terán, Vice President of the Council of the Americas offices here in Miami, and really it's an honor to be hosting so many of you from all over the world. Today, we're honored to be hosting an incredible panel of government and private sector sustainability leaders who will speak on the G20 Sustainability Agenda and what it means for businesses in the Americas. The experts joining us today are also from all over the world: Adalberto Maluf, Chair of the G20 Sustainability Working Group, and National Secretary, Urban Environment and Environmental Quality, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change of Brazil. Rodrigo Suarez, Climate and Sustainability Leader for the Latin America and Caribbean for Marsh McLennan, and our moderator and good friend, Pedro Pereira, Chief Sustainability Officer and Regional Vice President of SAP Latin America and the Caribbean. This conversation is part of our year-long Bravo Leadership Forums. These forums have become our signature engagement and dialogue platform for bringing Latin America's business leaders together to promote cross-industry collaboration on key issues impacting the region. We thank the Inter-American Development Bank for many years of partnership, and also thank the sponsors of our year-long Bravo series, the AES Corporation, Amazon Web Services, Chubb Latin America, Inter & Co., LLYC, Atlas Renewable Energy, Bank of America, Grupo Mariposa, Grupo Promérica, Salesforce, SAP, BlackRock, FedEx, and our media partners, America's Quarterly, Bloomberg Linea, and CNN en Español. Please note our Bravo group of Chief Sustainability Officers will meet in person during this year's annual COA Symposium to be held in Miami on October 30th. So please save the date, as we truly hope you will join us in Miami. Again, thank you so much for joining us virtually. And now I present our moderator, Pedro Pereira.
Hello and welcome, everybody. I truly love Bravo Circle of Latin America Chief Sustainability Officers. I had the pleasure to be one of the founding members of this group, and we've been together in person, we've been online, and every interaction, there is one thing for sure: we learn and grow together. This topic of sustainability, the impact that has to be made to the world, is not something we need to really take easy, because there is so much in this to unpack. And I'm very glad that to unpack this big topic of what the G20 Sustainability Agenda means for business in the Americas, we have the opportunity to talk to the chair of the G20. I have the pleasure to welcome Adalberto Maluf. Hello, Adalberto. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Hello, Pedro. It's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I'm coming back from vacation yesterday, so we're still trying to put everything on order here to restart, but it's a great pleasure to be with all of you.
Awesome. I'm super glad you are here. Actually, I was very impressed with your presence in COP28 in Dubai, how much you've been extracting from that opportunity, positioning the delegation from Brazil, the largest ever in the history of COP. And now you are chairing the G20. So you're always helping the world with your background. And I know you have also a deep background in the private sector. We want to explore the intersection of that as well. Thank you very much. Also, we have Rodrigo Suarez. He's the Climate and Sustainability Leader for Latin America and the Caribbean for Marsh McLennan. And what I love about your work, Rodrigo, and the work of your organization is this amazing study you've conducted in the risks of humankind. So it's a great pleasure to have you here and hear firsthand from you how that will help us drive the agenda of the business leaders in the near and long terms. Welcome to this discussion, Rodrigo Suarez.
Pedro and everyone, thank you and good morning to Adalberto. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And it's also a pleasure for us, for Marsh McLennan, to talk a little bit of what we do for the World Economic Forum, not only within the Global Risk Report, but also the Global People Risk Report that we do. And it has to be with the agenda of the G20, and we will talk about that with you and Albert. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's get started. And Alberto, why don't you let us get to know you better? You have a big job, big responsibility. Brazil is one of those big countries that are leading in the sustainability space. Let us get to know you, what you do in your day job, what's your passion, and then you can talk to us about an overview of the G20 perspective on sustainability.
Okay, wonderful, Pedro. Well, I've been working with environment for 20 years. I started at the Brazilian government and in the local government, working at the Secretary of Environment in São Paulo, almost 20 years ago. Then later I went to international foundations and organizations, worked with the Clinton Climate Initiative for almost 8 years. First Clinton Climate, then later C40 Cities. Trying to help and leverage projects with the large cities that are leading the way on climate change. Then I went to the private sector for 8, 9 years. I was also a sustainability director at BYD, one of the largest electric vehicle producer in the world. So all the development of the ESG agendas, all the things that we did in different associations. I was also the president of the Brazilian Association of Electric Vehicle, vice president of the Brazilian Association of Solar and Distributed Generation. And then since the beginning of last year, I had this pleasure of being invited by Minister Marina Silva to come here as National Secretary of Urban Environment and Environmental Quality. Very challenging agenda, as you can all imagine. It deals with air, water, soil, chemicals, climate emergency, waste, urban environment. We are just the President Lula just launched a new Green Resilient Cities program, which is a really nice program that integrates all the efforts and programs from the Minister of Cities, Minister of Environment, Minister of Science and Technology. So after 1.5 years here, we are finally, seeing a lot of projects moving, a lot of things being delivered. So I'm very happy that we were able also with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, because the G20 leadership is by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the ministers technically coordinate each of the groups. So we have the Environment and Climate Sustainability Group, which I chair one of the areas together with Minister Maria Angélica from Foreign Affairs. And we were able to add agendas that we believe are really important and that have not been so well debated internationally, on the emergency and preventive adaptation to actions to extreme weather events, payment for environmental service, ocean, which is also an area that historically we haven't been debating too much, and waste and circular economy, which are 2 areas inside my secretary. We have a lot of new legislations coming. So we were very happy to have this debate at the G20. We had already 2 meetings, but our first presidential meeting was in Manaus, maybe a month ago. For the first time, we brought the Waste Speakers Association there too. It was really nice to bring this perspective of the just transition, the informal workers of the recycling industry. And the paper that we proposed was already approved by everybody. I think it was one of the papers that had more consensus at all the G20 events. As you all know, G20 in general, it tries not to overlap with other negotiations. And Brazilian presidency didn't get into too much of these very controversial issues, So we want to deliver things. That's why the ambitions of the agenda is a little bit reduced. And some of the focus, which, there are not too many stakeholders against it, which is reducing poverty. We are proposing an international alliance against hunger. Also a little bit of improvements and adapt changes into the international organizations, but not to change them as a whole. It's not to change the IMF, the World Bank, but rather the topics that are there, the agendas that are at the World Bank, IMF, and all the other ones. And also one of the things which could be a little bit more controversial, but, perhaps not, which will be taxing the billionaires. We believe there's a big space. Even in the case of Brazil, the billionaires, they don't pay their fair price. You all know here, the Brazilians that are here, Brazilians are very creative not to pay taxes, and the rich people are paying much less than the more poor people. So we are trying to integrate all these agendas, and especially in our case here, payment for environmental service, adaptation, extreme weather events, and waste and circular economy, they deal directly with poverty reduction, climate change, social, economic benefits. So it's really nice to see all this agenda coming together at such an important forum like the G20, which is a great space, for countries to debate, also to restore the primacy of the multilateral governance, the legitimacy of negotiated decisions. I think, we are still living a very difficult world, very polarized world, on politics, on views on, the West and this kind of almost two sides, on the international agenda, and we want to break that. Historically, I also study international affairs in university. My master is on international affairs. So when we study international affairs in Brazil, we always like to say that Brazil has this ability to talk to everybody. We negotiate with China, India, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, at the same time that we negotiate and debate with the developed Western world, especially US, Europe. So I think Brazil can play a great role. We have the BRICS presidency next year. We have COP30, have Mercosur presidency. There's so many things happening together. And Brazil really believes together we can make a difference in creating more trust at the international arena.
Absolutely. We have a lot to unpack, as we heard from you. And of course, we want to tap into your business experience as well and understand how that impacts our leaders that are listening to us. The Bravo community is full of leaders that are trying to make sense of what you just said right now and bring it to the day-to-day of their organizations. But you said a lot of things about risks, which give me the opportunity to introduce Rodrigo and the analysis of the global risk report and emerging risks that they have done. So perhaps, Rodrigo, you can introduce to us a bit of the study background before we go and understand from Adalberto the implication of those decisions to the overall business communities that we have here in Bravo and the association. Rodrigo, talk to us about that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pedro. And as you said, Adalberto gave us the floor to talk a little bit about the global risk report, because what he was explaining is very important. And if you take a look of the concept notes that has been delivered from the G20 at the moment, you can see many of the risks trying to be tackled in those concept notes. In the global risk report that we do from Marsh McLennan for the Global Economic Forum, what we are seeing in the next 2 years is that we are going to have almost two risks regarding economic issues, environmental issues, geopolitical issues, societal issues, and technological. So it's going to be very hard for the Chief Sustainability Officers to take a decision where to help them to bring information to the board members, what to do with them. But the things are very different when we take a look to the next 10 years. Next 10 years is...
Hey, Rodrigo,
very...
just one thing for us. Can you switch the screen because we are seeing the notes slides, so it's going to be better for everybody.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Better here? No. Check here.
And that's great you're bringing this information, because those studies can actually drive the sense of urgency. That's what I see when I talk about these studies with the leaders that are working with SAP, and when they understand the near-term and the long-term implications, their strategies are designed around that. So it's going to be super important to hear from you what are the learnings from the study. Back to you.
Yeah, what we're seeing here is, I think I'm having an issue here to try to.
We can see the slide, okay? Just go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. And what we are seeing is that next 10 years gonna be, most of the issues are gonna be green. That's from sustainable environmental issues. So as Adalberto was saying, we're gonna have extreme weather events in the next 10 years, and we see it in Mexico a few months ago, few weeks ago in Brazil, and we are in receiving a lot of hurricanes right now in the Caribbean region. So that's going to be a very tough issue. And also what we are seeing is a lot of critical change to the earth systems. And there's another kind of documents that are saying what's going on in some regions. And we expect to talk a little bit of that in a few moments. Biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse is going to be a very big issue also. And what we are seeing in the Amazon basin is very important, and we need to work as a region, and that's why Brazil is very important in this moment. Not only as the G20 presidency, and also as Alberto was saying, BRICS, Mercosur. Colombia is the COP16 presidency this year, and next year Brazil within the COP30. So we have to bring different ways to understand the risk regarding biodiversity with natural resource shortage. So it's going to be very important to put the agenda regarding environmental issues, biodiversity, climate change in the top of the agenda, because it's the way to understand how to push, do action regarding these issues. So just to figure out what we are saying also here is that this risk are giving us some interconnections that are related with, for example, disruptions to critical infrastructure, but also is giving us some interactions with economic downturn, and also with social polarization. So what's going on here is that the environmental risk is giving us more than environmental issues. And when we talk to chief sustainability officers, what's going on is that environmental risks are turning to social risk, and also to geopolitical risk. Is almost the only risk that is becoming from environmental to social to geopolitical risk, and finally with economic. So it's going to be a big issue in the next 2 and 10 years. Pedro, back to you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And going back now to our conversation with Adalberto, we really want to explore, Adalberto, the implication of that to the business community. You've been running a strategy for your organizations for a long time, and we see the intersection now of the sustainability community with the chief financial officers community, the chief human capital community, and all that intersection makes the sustainability, ESG as we call it, a universal topic for everybody. What would be your advices for people that are designing their strategies over the next 3 to 10 years, even considering what Rodrigo just presented as risks? Do you see opportunities?
Oh, for sure, Pedro. I think Rodrigo brought very well the challenge we are all going to face. And here at the Brazilian government, that's why we decided that the Minister of Treasury, together with the Minister of Environment, is the leader of the ecological transformation plan. Because it's different when you have the Minister of Treasury having the different areas. We divide it in 6 areas. Circular economy and bioeconomy are the 2 areas which I'm a little bit more involved. But you also have the green financing. We have energy transition, you have technological developments, all the different areas. But the importance of having the treasurer analyzing is because more and more we see that the social, economic, environment causes and consequences, they're all merged together. So we need to try to understand also on a more valuing way how to integrate the policy. Also, environment is the #1 transversal action at the government in Brazil. We have the PPA, which is the participatory process for the budget, the 4 years budget of the new government. And the #1 voting that population gave to on the plan was climate emergency, which was a surprise to many. Historically, it's always environment, it's public health or education. It was the #1. So now 50 out of 88 programs inside the PPA have environment, green economy, climate change. So for us, it's really good. Minister Marina Silva says that her whole life she fought for that the other ministers were bringing the environment agenda. So for us, is also important to have the legitimacy and the political support of the treasurer. She always jokes that Minister Haddad, when he makes his speech, he speaks more of environment than herself. So she can speak about economy because he only talks about environment, which for us is good, you know. That's why we decided under the Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group that we would get into these more difficult topics that are transversal: emergency, adaptation, you know, payment for environmental service, waste, circular economy, ocean. All of them are integrated, and all the companies have somehow to study the impact that this new reality will have to them, you know, because the governments, we want to develop protocols, you know, that can reduce risk, mobilize resource for adaptation. In our case, of course, we are thinking of the most vulnerable, you know, how to give mandates for this. But all the companies also need to play their role, and all the companies also have to prepare for the impact of this new reality, these new extreme weather events to their own business, you know. We just launched our national strategy for circular economy. We are increasing a lot, raising the bars of our reverse logistics systems, which is the EPR, the extended product responsibility. We had many decrees, many, you know, whoever works with this in Brazil know that we are raising the bar dramatically with transparency, accountability, you know, how the companies have to pay their fair and equitable part in this transition. So the companies that are not part of this debate, when we approve, they're going to have to fulfill really bold agreements and gold targets like recycling content. To produce plastic in Brazil, starting next year, you're going to require 25% of recycled plastic as content to produce new plastic. So if you are a plastic producer and you are not part of this debate, I don't know how you're going to find 25% recycled plastic, you know, in a couple of months. So the director of supply chain needs to be together with the treasurer guy, the director of finance, and the director of sustainability, thinking about how we're going to do all the actions in order to fulfill the circular economy strategy. What are the actions for reduction by design? How we're going to change consumption behavior and patterns? How we're going to recover value from the products we are selling? How we're going to promote repair, refurnish, you know, remanufacturing, all the things of a circular economy? How to increase value, recycling. So companies need to be leading. In our case, we are happy to see that most of the big, especially international global companies, but also the big Brazilian companies, they're all participating in the debates. Every time we invite people here, we have a full auditor of, people from the business sector giving suggestions. We have trying to be very transparent, as Minister Marina says. We just had 2 new portarias, one for the PRO organizations, the extended product responsibility organizations. We did a public call. We received all the contributions. We had a public hearing. You know, out of 891 contributions, we accepted 55%. We made one more event to tell everybody what we accepted, why we didn't accept. Also, a part of the industry came, but we also think you have to change this. Then we came back, look, we don't want to change this because of this. So, then even we are doing things that part of the industry is not happy, they believe should be a different way, but they're not going against it. They are supporting because they're part of the debate.
Absolutely. And we are in it together, Adalberto. I'm glad to hear everything you're saying. I had this privilege of working in a global organization, and mostly our customers in Europe, they are facing responsible design and production challenges to stop using plastics, having traceability of the raw material, including plastics and even other elements as well, stopping deforestation. So representing the technology industry, we see that this is becoming a reality. There are no sustainable organizations if there are no sustainable processes. And we see that happening. And I'm glad to see in Latin America a great example of regulation that brings organizations an incentive to act right here and right now. As we are moving to our last segment before we go into a more private, gathering, we have here a big group with us. We are speaking live, but we have a big group as well. We're going to move to a offline conversation with them out of the webcast. And I hope everybody would be here with us. And if you want to be with us, wherever you are listening to this webcast, get in touch with the Bravo community. Try to become part of the CSO for Latin America, where these dialogues are happening as we speak. So in order to move to the next segment, Rodrigo, can you give us your last considerations and advices, your call to action for the community here?
Okay, Pedro. Thank you. And it's very interesting what Adalberto was saying about the 50 over the 88 proposals in the national plan. But I was seeing that starting a little bit of what the concept notes of the G20 have been developed. And it's also very interesting how they are putting environmental issues and sustainability issues on the concept notes. I have been reading almost 17 or 18 of them have been put SDGs in the top of the issues, and is putting also, as you said, oceans, circular economy, adaptation, risk, innovation, economy, bioeconomy, paying debt within environment. So there's a lot of things that we are seeing in the G20 last documents that I'm also very happy to see how they are linking what we are seeing from our perspective of the global risk report also. But what we are seeing also is that we need to push the agenda very, very hard within very, as we were talking, we are living like a bunny situation. So what we have to do is try to embrace agility and adaptability very, very fast. We have to encourage with our communities, with our cities, our clients to adopt an agile mindset to embrace adaptability from one side. From the other side, we need to enhance risk management practice to advise clients to strengthen the risk management practice to effectively identify, access, mitigate risk within what is going on. By the other side, we need to invest in technology and digital transformation. And what we are seeing from the G20, there's a big conversation over there. So we need to recommend to our cities, to our governments to invest in technology and digital transformation. And don't forget that the first risk for the next 2 years will be misinformation. So it is important to take that in mind. And by the other hand, we need to foster innovation and collaboration. And finally, what we are seeing is that we have to prioritize with employee well-being and engagement. So those are the things that we expect that we have to push the agenda, and that we are expecting from the laws, decrees, resolutions that the governments start to push a little bit. What we're seeing also is that some governments are taking action, but not all the governments are taking action. And that's why we are moving in a 3 degrees scenario, sadly. And that's why we call that we are in a climate crisis. What we are expecting is that most of the governments can take more action, and corporations take more action, as I was explaining. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rodrigo. Or I would say you are from Colombia. Gracias. Adalberto, tell us, final considerations. Is there a roadmap we can all follow right now?
Well, Pedro, I think it's not easy to have a roadmap for everybody because, you know, everything depends on the national reality, national circumstance. Brazil believes a lot that each country has its own space to develop its own agenda. Even from the negotiation of plastic that have been very strong, we also have a chapter on the negotiation of plastic. Our ministerial declaration will go there. We believe there's a good momentum for the world. We have Thailand at the end of next year for this intersectional work on INC between 4 and 5, and at the end of the year in Korea. But the thing is that most of these environment and climate agendas, they have to dialogue with the ultimate challenge we are all facing, which is climate change. You know, at the end, we are talking about environmental service, ocean, we're talking about waste, but everything relates to climate. And this huge challenge we have to come to COP30 next year in Brazil, improve our NDCs, and show that based on the best science available, we can find a solution to reduce and mitigate our efforts. That's why we had this task force on mobilization for climate. It's focusing a lot on finance. What are the role of the central banks in delivering this? You know, how are the country's climate and development investments platform? You know, how we're going to get the national green economic plans, mobilizing private sector investment, and how we're going to change our NDCs to have not only the climate-related actions for what we already know, but also the non-CO2 climate change program. As you all know, the short-life climate pollutants already represent 50% of the climate increase in the climate change in temperature. You know, they are methane, they are HFCCs, ozone, black carbon, and they're still not regulated. But perhaps they're our solution because they are short-life climate pollutants. So if we reduce half of them, and it's possible, we win time, we buy time in order to deliver what we want. So as you will see, most of the documentations we're going to have, most of the ministerial declarations we're going to have from all the, they are proposing more in this consensus agenda. We are trying to show the world there's a lot of topics, we have more common ground than differences. You know, and I saw meetings, like all the G20 meetings, it starts in the beginning, well, it's always, you know, gets a little bit into the Russia invasion on Ukraine, you know, and Palestine and Israel and problems like geopolitical problems. But then when we get into the documents and papers, we have, you know, China and India and Russia agreeing with, you know, Germany, UK, US, and we are getting common grounds on a lot of things. So Brazil really wants to try to play this role, you know, in getting a more equitable transition, ensuring that all sides of society can benefit, that we leave no one behind, that we don't also increase the difference in the ability between countries, the rich countries and developing countries, because we all know that most of the energy consumption, the new energy consumption in the world is coming for the developing world, you know? But when you see all the investments in green energy, and it's on the rich countries, so there's a lot of things that we still need to get good data, you know, good information. We want to create public policy based on the best science. So I think we are at a good momentum now that the private sector is on board. That's what I heard at most of the COPs I joined, and not only the climate, but on BRS, Basilea, Rotterdam, and Stockholm, on the COP of Minamata, on the INC process for the creating an international agreement on tackling plastic pollution. Private sector wants clear rules. It wants the same rules for everybody. It wants clear rules. Everybody follow the same, give us clear guidelines. And that's what we want. We want to try to get what is the possible consensus. Let's have these clear guidelines for everybody. And let's have the private sector leading the way, because as we all know, the private sector is the one that has the resources and can mobilize the investments. Governments, especially in the case of developing countries like Brazil, we mobilize very little, At the end, we depend on the private sector. So that's why we are focused so much on talking, listening, and trying to mobilize the private sector to where we believe we should go.
Absolutely. And we are here to make it happen. I want to thank you, Adalberto Maluf, Rodrigo Soares, for this amazing time. It was a wonderful conversation. Of course, there is the feeling for more, and we are actually having more. We are moving now to a private, off-the-record conversation. But for now, I want to thank you both. I want to thank everybody that was with us. And I encourage everyone to join the Bravo Circle of Latin America Chief Sustainability Officers, so you can be part of these private, off-the-record conversations, our events, and the way we bring these leaders together. Thank you.